All right, we're going to go ahead and get started and call this meeting of the West Dallas West Milwaukee School District to order, please. If we could please rise for the pledge. And Mr. Schultz, could you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
United States of America
and
to the republic
for which it
stands
Under God.
under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everybody. All right, Suzette, if we could do the roll, please.
Mr. Sikich.
Present.
Mr. Lee.
Muted.
Here.
Present. Mr. Keller.
Here.
Mrs. Kaiser.
Present.
Mrs. Justum. Is she present?
I don't see her.
Maybe delayed. Okay, we'll watch for her to join. Ms. Klug.
Here.
Mr. Ustruck.
Here.
Mr. Schultz.
Here.
President Emmons.
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Are there any modifications or changes or additions to tonight's agenda?
I have none.
Okay. Any board members? Okay, we will then move on to item 6 on our agenda, our public comment. So a couple of things we're doing differently today because we have people in various locations. So anybody who signed up on the Google form, which was posted in the agenda, will be called. Anybody who lists their name in the chat here in the Zoom meeting will also be called. And anybody who signed up on the paper sheets in the board room will also be called. When you are asked to speak, please make sure if you are on the Zoom meeting that you open up your camera and unmute your mic at that time for your time to talk. Anybody who is in the boardroom, please go up to the podium. And at that time, you will speak into the computer, into the Zoom meeting so that the rest of the board members can hear you. We'll have 3 minutes to address the board, and we do not engage, respond, or debate during the meetings, but then you will get a response from the school district before our next scheduled board meeting on the 22nd. Okay, so we will go ahead and get started with our sheet here. So Candy, you are up first.
My name is Candy Trebetowski. I live at 1524 South 64th Street. Members of the school board and Dr. Luxman, good evening. First and foremost, I hope you all are staying healthy. Many of you may know me but for those that don't, I have been a parent in this district for 13 years. I've spent most of those years volunteering for the kids in this district while holding down a full-time job. I tell you this because I have gotten to know these kids over the years and was heartbroken for them when I learned that they would not have an in-person graduation. I am sure you have all had national that you've had to deal with over the past 3 weeks. I'm not a person to come in here and yell at you because I did not get my way. I'm here to speak on behalf of the majority of the senior class of 2020 and their parents. I am saying that because over the past month, we have learned that not everyone thinks the way we do and want to be considerate of their wishes. It is with great sadness that I must be here. We are here to ask that you reconsider your decision to hold a drive-through graduation for all students and consider a compromise. The compromise would consist of those students and parents that feel comfortable with having an in-person graduation have it, and those that don't have the drive-through graduation. This can all take place at the athletic complex. I feel that the decision to change the graduation to a partial virtual, partial drive-through graduation was made prematurely. As the governor has ordered that the school close until June 30th, several of the district's facilities will be open for the graduation plan for July 11th. We find it unfortunate that other neighboring districts within the Milwaukee County are now hosting their graduations in mid-July on their own athletic field in person. Our question is, well, how are they doing it and why can't we do the same? While I understand the decision was made in the best interest of all families, I feel that perhaps Dr. Luxman and his administrative team should have actually reached out to families and asked them what they wanted. Several of the seniors have seen this and took it upon themselves to serve as they could contact by foot. There's no technology provided to them to get everyone's opinion, but they found a consistent theme. Most of the seniors want as traditional a graduation as possible. In just under 5 days, we have spoken with at least 100 seniors, all who are in favor of a traditional or as traditional graduation as possible. We have these kids the kids and parents fill out the survey and sign waivers. I'm happy to show those to you tonight. While I also know this is just a fraction of the seniors, I feel that had the district administrative team done their due diligence and actually done a survey to the families affected, The number of seniors who wanted a traditional graduation would have been far higher. Please understand, as a person with asthma, I know the dangers of COVID-19, and my child doesn't want me to put myself at any unnecessary risk, as she likes to call it. But I'm not here for her or myself. I am here for her fellow classmates and peers. I am here speaking on behalf of those seniors who did not think they would make it to graduation. I am here for the kids who worked so hard for 14 years to get to that moment in time, those who were bullied, those who tried to or thought about committing suicide, those who struggled every single day for 14 years to pass their grade levels and classes, and those whose the teachers and administration turned a blind eye to, all the way up to the district office. Those who had babies and could have easily dropped out using their baby as an excuse, and those who could not handle a traditional classroom setting for one reason or another. Don't those kids matter? They deserve to walk across the stage with their peers there and get the chance to say, I did it. No matter what happened in the last 14 years, I still did it. They deserve to have their teachers cheer them on and their peers too. This was their last opportunity as a student of this district to say, in spite of everything, I still did it. Your decision has taken that from them. I've spent numerous hours on the phone, via text message, via Facebook Messenger, talking to the seniors. I am happy to forward those comments and letters to you all through email. We have letters from alderpersons, which I believe were sent directly to you in support of an in-person graduation. The majority of the seniors have said the same thing. They don't care about the speeches. They care about their friends and their peers seeing them walk across the stage, and they want their teachers and parents to cheer them on. But the worst statement I heard from the seniors is, who cares? In the end of the school year, the year sucked anyway. The decision is made. They didn't care what we thought or what we wanted. I am wondering if you all have taken that time to listen to these students. As parents, we have discussed many options, which two gentlemen will be speaking about. But basically, one was to go as far as going to Miller Park. The cost is $15,000 to $20,000. However, we continue to come back to what other districts in the area are doing, and that's using our Allen athletic field. We have a multi-million-dollar sports complex that includes a field that can safely put on a graduation. We have over 50 parent volunteers who are willing to help wipe down chairs and bleachers and make sure students and their guests wear masks. We have people willing to build a stage and do what needs to be done to protect the precious football field. We have parents that will donate what they can, i.e. sanitizer, gloves, money, masks, you name it, they're willing to do it, to make sure the graduation is done safely. And we have those parents that are willing to measure out 6 feet to follow the 6-foot social distancing recommendation. 2 other parents will speak regarding those plans, as I said before. Additionally, you have limited graduates to 1 car. This may be fine for some families, but what about those families who have split families or have blended families? What about those parents who are in a domestic violence situation? Those people don't want to be in the same vehicle with their abuser. Additionally, what about those families who don't own a vehicle? There are many kids at Central alone who have taken the city bus every day just to go to school. Are you providing transportation for those people? I don't think so. Please know, I don't live with my head in the sand. I know the dangers people could be facing. We are well aware of the need to keep everyone safe. Our plan would consist of providing masks and hand sanitizer for everyone that attends graduation. We would accomplish that from the 50-plus parent volunteers and non-senior parent volunteers that we have gathered that want to just help the seniors. We will sanitize every single chair and all the bleachers to give the kids what they deserve. I just ask you to reconsider your decision. Thank you.
Elizabeth Rowe. And please remember to state your name and address when you start talking into the meeting, please. I have yours because it was on the Google Sheet, so you're good on that one. You're still on the Zoom meeting. You're still talking to the board on the computer, so that's not a big deal at the moment. You're just not being broadcast in the room. So, yeah. Yeah, it's still on the computer, which is where you're talking to the board. Elizabeth Rowe.
Good evening, my name is Elizabeth Rowe, and I have a student that goes to Nathan Hale High School. On Friday, March 13th, students left Nathan Hale not knowing it was the last day of school. No goodbyes to classmates, teachers, administration, or the school that housed their memories. These kids have given up so much, such as no baseball, softball, track, girls soccer, or boys tennis. Seniors missed opportunities to receive scholarships, to celebrate senior night, where they are recognized and presented to the community for years of hard work, nor do they have an individual end of season awards banquet to honor their contributions to our school. No National Honor or Language Honor Society in-person ceremonies allowed. Students missed signing the NHS book, lighting the candle, and receiving honors quartz. No academic awards banquet where seniors are recognized and presented to the community for scholarship recognition and academic quartz. There was no theater production and plays, no band, orchestra, or choir concert, no prom, no painting of the mural by Senior Student Council, no senior dinner dance, no senior picnic, no senior college rep day, no senior council activities and planning events, no field trips, no yearbook signing with their classmates, no club activities and events, and I'm sure I'm missing some others. We need to do more for these kids who have lost so much. A drive-through graduation seems like the path of least resistance and conveys a perception that these kids do not matter. A perception that the school and community want to sweep 2020 under the rug, start fresh in 2021, forgetting the sacrifices these kids made this year. These activities and celebrations lost in 2020 were the most important part of their lives, and they deserve the option to be together as a class one last time. What I am proposing is that we hold a safe, graduate-only, in-person graduation following social distance guidelines with proper protection and controls in place. The proposed details include using the Nathan Hale football field, placing 358 chairs greater than 6 feet apart on the field. I have a CAD drawing representing a 6-foot grid with a 12-foot walking path. Student temperatures taken with no-touch scanners before entering the event, requiring masks worn for the event, requiring hand sanitizer usage to enter the event, marking a one-way path to the bleachers for use as a stage, to then return to their chair, maintaining 6-foot social distancing. The bleachers are handicap accessible. Live streaming the event, available for anyone to watch, and recording the event for those not able to stream the event. Jannard Incorporated, a safety and environmental consulting firm in New Berlin, has offered to donate the use of 4 no-touch temperature scanners and a donation of up to 500 individually wrapped masks for the event. Our family will provide the hand sanitizer. A student-only in-person graduation will not replace everything these kids lost this year, but will provide some level of respect and appreciation for their hard work representing Nathan Hale High School. We need to fight for these kids, respect them, and provide opportunity for this class to celebrate commencement. It's the least that we can do. I'd like to thank John Rowe for the statement and Dan Schneider of Jannard Incorporated for the generous donation. Thank you.
There's Denny Kazan that signed up on the Google form.
Hi, yeah, that's
Hi.
me.
Wonderful, thank you. Please state your name and address then for the record, and then you've got 3 minutes to talk to everybody.
Awesome. Okay, I'm Denny Kazan. I live on 121st Street. Do you want like my full address or? Just,
Yes, please.
Okay, 1112 South 121st Street.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. So I go to Nathan Hale. I'm a senior there, and I'm here to voice my support for the current graduation that is in place. With this current graduation, we're still being celebrated as graduates. We still get to walk across the stage. We still get to accept our diplomas in front of our families safe in their cars. And in front of our friends and teachers through the live stream. First, I would like to begin with the fact that I grieve alongside my classmates with the loss of our senior year and traditional celebrations. But I'm grateful to those making the hard decisions to keep us all safe and to do their best to celebrate us in our own unique way for the resilient class of 2020. I would now like to bring to your attention all of those who lost their lives to the virus. I'm sure you have all seen the paper that the New York Times put out with all of the names of those who lost their lives to the virus. I don't bring this up in order to guilt anyone. I'm simply trying to raise awareness to the fact that this virus is a real threat to safety. These names aren't just names. They are people with families, friends, pets. Having an in-person graduation at this point would not only be extremely irresponsible, it would exclude those not able to participate, such as those who are immunocompromised, those under stress, as that lowers the immune system, those above 50, as your immune system weakens with age, young people, women who are pregnant or nursing, and many more. This virus does not only affect those that belong to the populations I have just mentioned, it also attacks those who are healthy. Thus, an in-person graduation would put the health of everyone at risk. Next, I want to touch on some of the alternative options that people are bringing up. They're saying that we could provide people with masks. As seen in multiple in-person graduations that have occurred elsewhere, there's no way to ensure that those masks are continuously being worn properly. As seen in many photos, there are plenty of people incorrectly wearing masks. Not wearing a mask correctly defeats the purpose of a mask altogether, rendering it useless. As for having the graduation on a field 6 feet apart, we do not want to damage the field. People have brought up the fact that there are football players that wear metal spikes that dig into the turf, but the ends of a chair digging into the ground for 3 hours straight all over the field is a completely different situation. Having an in-person graduation at a different location is also not feasible. How would it be paid for? We cannot charge tickets, as there are people from all over this district that cannot afford it, myself included. I also believe that we as a district cannot take on the liability of having an in-person graduation. What if someone gets infected and sues? If there were to be an in-person graduation, I can assure you that people would not stay 6 feet apart as suggested by the CDC. After the graduation took place, they would want to take pictures with their friends, thereby spreading the virus. Just because the state is open and more things are opening up, that does not mean that the virus is no longer a threat. And I think it is our responsibility to make the sacrifice and do what's right for the community to keep everyone safe. So I will leave you all with this. I recently lost my mom, and I'm doing everything that I can to prevent others from feeling the pain and suffering that I have endured this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nikki Curtis. Hold on one second. We have to unmute it.
I'm Nikki Curtis, and I live on 1222 South 123rd Street. I represent Nathan Hale, and I'm just going, one extra comment that I wanted to ask everybody is, if you guys have decided this out of nowhere, out of Memorial Day weekend, you guys pop an email saying that our kids no longer will have an in-person graduation, and now it's a drive-through graduation, then we want to know why you are waiting till July 19th instead of doing it this past weekend when we should have done it. You could have done a drive-by through on the regular graduation date, but now those poor children have to wait another whole month and wait to be graduated. I think that's wrong, and I think it's disrespectful, and I think we deserve an answer for that. Thank you.
Hi, Jeff Tributowski, 1524 South 64th Street.
Jason Garaziak, 7029 West National Avenue.
And we had come up, along with a few other parents, have come up with a plan for using the West Dallas, West Milwaukee, the football field up at the West Dallas Athletic Complex. The chairs will be spread out 6 feet apart on either plywood cut out for the chair for furniture on the bottoms of the chairs, either the furniture cups, the moving cups, or if possible, have the students bring their own lawn chairs, which have the square bottoms so they will not ruin the field. Bleachers will also be marked 6 to 9 feet at intervals for a normal size group of 2 to 4 personnel for the parents. Stage will be located at the West Dallas Central end zone, so it's closest to the concession stand so they can use power. We've got a quote from a professional roadie company of $8,000 for sound and stage so that either side of the bleachers is not blocked by any stage. We can fit at 17 seats per row, 18 rows starting at the 10-yard line going no further than the 50, 306 students. It's safe distances. And along with the volunteers that we have for wiping down all the bleachers, the seats, the chairs if we need be, they will also be out monitoring the crowd for proper mask wear, proper social distancing, and wiping down all those chairs. Females, students will be required to not wear heels, either flats, sandals, and all attendees, we will have parents, volunteers at each entrance to the stadium with a list of parents and loved ones that have already signed the waiver so that we do not have people signing double waivers. And they will have that along with a stack of waivers. We figure all speeches except for the principals will be done virtually to keep this ceremony short and to allow time for all schools to graduate their people in the same day. And the company that had given us the quote said they would be fine doing the graduations at noon and 3. Ideal would be 1 and 4. And that would be complete setup, professional setup with an $1,100 discount. So we get everything set up and no labor fees, because that would be the $1,100. Each senior will be given 1 glove to put on at the base of the stage when they go up to shake hands with the principal and receive their diploma. So the roadie would be set and it would be professionally set up, stage and everything else. And we could come up with definite plans by the 22nd, the next board meeting, as long as we have access to get onto the football field, so we can get everything drawn up, get temporary markers out there, get pictures from up in the stands, get pictures on the stands of the distancing, so we can figure out how many parents are allowed. We're guessing at about 4 people per student right now. And if we have to, and the second plan would be the West Dallas, West Milwaukee football field. Third plan would be the Miller Park, which would then ask the principals for some of the graduation funding and any donations by students, senior student families, and community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to pronounce the last name right. Amber is the first name. Oh, sorry. Niebuhr. Okay, thank you. And then your name and address into the meeting going, please. Thank you.
My name is Amber Niebuhr, and my address is 2651 South 94th Street. I have a son who is graduating from Hale, but I'm here to speak on behalf of the 2 girls from Docky. The one reads, I am one of the very few that did half days at Hale and Docky for junior year and first semester of my senior year. Then switched over to Docky full time. The past 7 years of middle school and high school have been horrible. I've had people tell me that I wasn't going to graduate and that I would be a dropout, even if I had a school administrator tell me that I should just be homeschooled, said my 8th grade year. For the rest of my schooling career, because I was difficult or different, because of my truancy and my mental illness, but here I am now finally able to graduate, but I'm not excited, and I don't know who would be excited about a drive-through ceremony. Sorry. Especially because I was adopted, so I have 2 sets of parents, so what am I to do? Pick which ones I would like better so they can be there and there won't be a problem trying to fit into a car. Thank you. Or how about people who have divorced parents or don't have any parents at all? How about the ones who don't have access to cars? The day that it was announced that we would have a drive-through graduation, I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. Not because we weren't going to be doing the person stage, but because this district says that they have our backs and that they want us to do what's best. They want to do what's best for the children. But I was blindsided that we have such a huge football field, and with help of students and parents and volunteers, this could so much in many ways work. Many schools have done it before. The handshake and the tassel change could simply be changed by a smile and the graduate moving it themselves. Rather than the person handing them the diploma, it could be just simply picked up off the table by the graduate. Graduating at both Hale and Docky was so very important to me. For one, because Hale is my home school, and it just feels right, and I practically grew up with half the kids that I'm graduating with, although we may have only passed by each other in the hallways. Nowadays, a smile, or maybe not even say a word, but know that they were still my childhood family and friend. And then there is Docky. With a very small senior class, it would make no sense why we couldn't be an in-person graduation or a traditional ceremony. And that was Rosie Towie. I probably said it wrong, sorry. And then this is Angelique. She said yep, that's it then, yep. Yep. Rosie, what's your 9737 West Beagle Terrace? Yep.
Sorry. Okay. I will go ahead and mark that. Mary Ellen. Go ahead.
I don't know what I need to do.
Your name and then your address, and then you can go ahead and just talk right into the camera in the computer. Okay. Everything's set up for you.
My name is Mary Ellen Levra. My address, 7032 West Dryer Place. And so I would like to make a statement in regards to seniors that I had reached out to, or actually reached out to me. I felt that was vital in making the decision because the graduation is all about the seniors and not about the parents. Take a deep breath. So I have it written down. Well, we have been through so much, and again, this is Angelique. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. We have been through so much already, and this would just mean the world to us if we could have one. It's just not fair, and yes, I know that all this is going on, but we did also finish high school. Plus, it could be the first high school graduation in some families, and for others that don't have families, AKA me. I did this for my dad, so he would be proud of me. I know he can't see me, but I did it for him. And that is her quote. And just something I wanted to add, which has previously been mentioned, as a parent of a Central graduate, we are coming here recognizing that there is a variety of opinions. We're also very aware of what the health situation is with COVID and the safety factors with that. And I just want to say that I agree with Candy that I hope and pray that you could consider a compromise on behalf of these students who have worked 14 years for this moment in time. So if you could please reconsider, you would have parents, families, students that would be more than grateful for that opportunity. So thank you.
Crystal?
Okay, my name is Crystal Barber, 2028 South 81st Street. And I just want to say I'm proud of my daughter, a senior from Central, regardless. I know she's going to go on. I'm going to have another opportunity to see her graduate, but there are many that are not. So actually, my daughter started a spreadsheet, was physically reaching out to students, offering up their addresses that will be willing to sign up this mock waiver of liability, which we couldn't have everybody. I literally was driving up and down streets hitting signs of DACI, shared journeys, Hale, and Central, amongst other parents as well. Along with that, we supplied them with a student survey, which they were not given that opportunity to see their input. They were given a senior survey, but we already know how their senior year was. They were not asked about graduation. Their thoughts were not considered. So I'm more so fighting for all the students that will not have a second chance to go. Everybody doesn't go to college. I'm also, people that come from Jefferson, that's where my daughter went prior. There's families that have been invited in that have had to change their tickets. And there's more than one student she wants to see walk, because we're still in very much contact with this mother that had a daughter pass away that should be graduating this year, amongst a few others. So I know I was walking the streets, I was talking with the parents. Out of X amount of surveys that I was able to physically get and speak with people, I had one not interested. And the one not interested is not weighing out why we're not getting a compromise here. We have parents, as we were walking, that were willing to volunteer, and we were adding them to our list as we went. So I just, I know that the seniors of, I just want to read something if I can pull it up. But anyways, we can't ever say that we know how the seniors of 2020 feel. They do, they've already lost their senior year. Don't let them lose this as well, please. Thank you.
And just a reminder too, that if you are on the meeting remotely, if you could please, if you want to speak in public comments, please list your name in the chat. The chat is located along the bottom of the Zoom meeting. If you have the room expanded, it's a little like word bubble. You just list your name in there, and then I will call those people in just a moment as well. So if you could please do that. I have put a couple messages in the chat, so if you would like to open that up, you'll be able to see that as well. Haley.
My name's Haley Serwinski. I live at 2028 South 81st. So like my mom said, I started a spreadsheet, and students were offering me their addresses to go to their house in order to give them a survey. I didn't do anything illegal or shady, like people who wanted it. Even if they didn't want a graduation, I still wanted the evidence of yes or no. So out of the 115 houses myself and others have surveyed, 21 people were okay with the plan, 94 people were not. And then 110 people preferred a traditional, 5 people did not. I have all of them right here. And just wanted to read some of the comments people wrote. One person said, give them a graduation. I would like a normal graduation if the circumstances were different, but I like the graduation planned. The current graduation being a drive-through is a disgrace to all the students who deserve it. It would be nice to see everyone one last time. It would mean a lot to be able to have a normal graduation. It'd be really special for me to be able to have that special moment. I understand if it is not possible, however, I would prefer it. I would like a traditional graduation. Please try to utilize the football field that we already have. That's all I have.
Okay, and then on the meeting, we have Katie. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute and put your camera on, then you can go ahead and speak too. There you are.
Hi, my name is Katie Kazan. I live at 1112 South 121st Street. I'm a sibling / guardian of a student at Nathan Hale. And my point in speaking is just kind of to ask general questions to those who are wanting an in-person graduation. Some of those questions are, I understand that there's a public gathering right now in terms of this meeting to voice their opinions. And I've noticed that none of them are wearing masks. when those masks were required. So my question is, when those masks are required for the in-person graduation, how are we to be guaranteed that they will be wearing those when they're in attendance to that graduation? And how do we know that they will be worn properly? Another question is if we were to utilize the field and there would be no damage, how would we social distance enter everybody into the field? That would add hours to the graduation in the heat, the sun, increasing contact, and increasing the risk of COVID. If we're entering hundreds of parents and students into the field at 6 feet apart, that would take, again, hours. I also heard that the concerns about having only 4 tickets for the graduation, and then that being turned into only 1 car at the drive-through graduation. Cars can seat more than 4 people, so you're already getting more family members in attendance. And it was already touched on that if you did need more than 1 car, for instance, if you had divorced parents or you had siblings that were, social distancing at another house, you could have more than 1 car in attendance to that graduation. So I think you're actually, benefiting from this drive-through graduation because you're getting more of your family in attendance, they're safer, you're keeping your community safe, and these students are learning a huge lesson. This isn't normal times that we're living through. It's scary, and it's nothing like anybody's ever experienced in our lifetime. And I think that these students who, want to have this in-person graduation, I understand, and it is sad that these opportunities are being taken away, but it's nobody's fault. It's the circumstances we're living in. And I think taking the opportunity and still being celebrated, still, getting to walk across that stage, even though your family's in a car or your friends are on the other end of a screen, taking that opportunity and celebrating those little things, this doesn't take away any accomplishments. They're still walking the stage, they're still accepting a diploma, and it's still a very exciting time. And I think, just taking that moment and just, making the most of it, even though it's not what we all anticipated, I think is very important in this situation. And I definitely, stand behind whatever decision is made. I just want to put out there again that there are going to be people that cannot attend an in-person graduation. And whether it's, taken in place of the drive-through or there's a compromise and both happen, students are going to feel left out because everybody can attend the drive-through graduation. Not everyone can go to the in-person. So I just want to put that out there that kids will feel left out. And the students that have worked really hard to give speeches and to write speeches, to have that taken away to save time at an in-person graduation is a disservice to those students who've worked extremely hard through their entire academic career, and then to also speak in front of their class. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that was it for the sign-in sheet. That was it for the physical sheet. Brendan, were there any more sheets in the back? No, okay, great, thank you. Okay, we will then move on to item 7, the superintendent's report. Dr. Lexman.
Okay, thank you. Start with the legislative update. So pandemic EBT. So Wisconsin has been approved to issue temporary food benefits called pandemic EBT or PEBT to children who attend schools participating in the National School Lunch Program, which is all of our schools, and who would normally receive free or reduced price school meals if schools were not closed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. These benefits are in addition to free meals being served to students at 447 sites throughout Wisconsin. The PEBT benefits do not impact schools supplying meals to students. Excuse me. Students can still receive free meals from their schools at this time through the Seamless Summer Option or Summer Food Service Program. The West Allis West Milwaukee School District has been working to notify families regarding this additional benefit. The Department of Public Instruction, DPI, issued new guidance on how school districts must address the impact of the extended school closures due to COVID-19 on students with disabilities. The new guidance refers to the services provided by school districts to address students' lack of access to special education and related services or lack of progress during the school closure as additional services. The guidance from DPI requires school districts to use the IEP process to make determinations if any service due to school closures are required with the following considerations. I'm not going to read all of this, just the kind of first sentence of each bullet. The amount of instruction and special education services provided to the student during the closure, and information from any data collected or tracking of student progress during this time. Information and observations from parents and other family members about the student's ability to access remote learning opportunities and special education services during this school closure period. The student's level of academic and functional performance, including levels of performance on all IEP goals prior to the school closure as compared to the student's current level of performance. The student's progress in the general education curriculum in comparison to age grade level peers, and the student's prior need for an extent of ESY, which is extended school year services, and information about the student's previous ability to recoup skills and make progress after extended breaks in instruction, such as during the summer. So we added a little bit here in the legislative update for the board and the public. So a little bit of our plan. So Ann Locke worked with case manager several weeks ago to create a tracking system for services in each IEP and which services have and have not been accessible during our school closure. Case managers have continued to provide services and work closely with families to communicate the plan and the services available. They're keeping progress monitoring notes for each goal area of the IEP. There have been some services that have been unavailable to be delivered during this time for various reasons. IEP teams will meet to determine any additional services due to school closure for any student where the case manager or the parent has concerns about the progress monitoring data to determine the need for additional services due to school closure and make a plan to provide those services once schools are allowed to be open in the summer or into the next school year. Similarly, at the federal level, the U.S. Department of Education chose not to seek a waiver for many of the requirements under the IDEA or Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Most notably, a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. So essentially the summary is we're still required to provide all of the services that are delineated in IEPs, even those that are impossible to deliver due to school closures. So we have to monitor our kids making progress, and if they're not, then provide additional services as a result. So here again, our plan, we're working on creating a testing center at our administration building and transitioning testing to online platforms so we can move forward with special education evaluations and the needed formal testing in order to meet the needed timelines within an evaluations for special education and a reevaluation. So Noah, I see a hand. You're still muted.
Sorry. So considering this, has there been any note of additional funding for any of these additional things that we would have to do because of the COVID-19 being closed to be able to fulfill these requirements?
At this time, no. Go ahead, Deidre.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but no, the recommendation is that you use the IDEA funding that you were already receiving, or you use the CARES funding that has been made available to us. That's the pot of money for everything related to COVID. That's been the recommendation.
Okay, thanks.
So they are additional services that we would need to figure out and tied to the current funding that we have or the CARES money that we were issued.
Okay, I'll go on to 7.2, which is our recognitions. So first of all, it's not really a recognition. Mrs. Linda Buczek, we're all deeply saddened to inform on the board, the public, of one of our Sodexo colleagues has passed away due to complications of COVID-19. Linda was our lead lunch lady at Irving Elementary for over 13 years. She was the true epitome of how you want your child treated at school. Linda was very caring and deeply involved with the entire Irving Elementary School community. Our thoughts and prayers are with her entire family, especially her mother, Sue Malloy, who also works for Sodexo at Irving Elementary School. At Madison Elementary School, the Madison Elementary School Parent Teacher Association, the PTA, is proud to announce that Mrs. Jane Fetchko has been awarded the Wisconsin PTA Outstanding Educator of the Year Award for the 2019-2020 school year. Mrs. Fetchko has been teaching in the West Allis, West Milwaukee district for over 20 years. She works continuously to build strong, positive relationships with Madison Elementary School families, the PTA, her colleagues, and most importantly, her students. So congratulations to Jane Fetchko. To be the Wisconsin PTA, statewide, is quite an honor. And then I'm not going to read all of the names, but we do want to recognize our retirees. Some retired in the year 2019 during this school year, some here at the end of the school year in 2020. And then there's also employees that have been with us 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. And traditionally, we would gather together and do a recognition for the employees and provide them with a gift recognizing either their retirement or their years of service with us. We're unable to do that at this time, but we did put together a tribute. So a short video that acknowledges their contributions to our district. And we just really want to thank them for their years of service again here at the board meeting. And then 7.3, some updates and information items.
Marty, I think we were going to play the video real quick.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so is somebody going to share?
Yep, Brandon's going to take care of that, right?
Great, thank you.
On behalf of the West Allis West Milwaukee School Board, I would like to welcome you to our virtual employee recognition ceremony. Each year we have the pleasure of recognizing our employees for their years of service to our district. And this year, well, we've had to do things a little bit differently. And although we're not able to meet in person, we want to let you know just how much your service is deeply valued. As we congratulate these employees for their milestones of service, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and those venturing off into retirement, though they will be honored with a gift on behalf of the school board in gratitude for their dedication and commitment to our district and to our community. Thank you.
Hey everybody, Marty Lexman here. I am proud to serve as the superintendent of the West Allis West Milwaukee School District. And as you know, our school district serves over 8,200 students and over 1,300 employees. And our goal always is to attract and retain talented, dedicated, and effective staff that are really happy to call this place their place of employment. Now, we're really proud and thankful that all of the employees that are being celebrated this year selected the West Allis West Milwaukee School District as their workplace. What we do is often demanding, and now more than ever, as you all know, but it's also really rewarding. So we wish to thank all of you for your years of service to our schools. We could not achieve our district mission and vision without your creativity, commitment, and expertise. So thanks to all of you, and have a great summer.
Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we've heard a lot about heroes. Our medical workers, service workers, and first responders have been paramount in helping us through this difficult time. Yet there are still many more heroes to celebrate. It was Fred Rogers that said, anyone who does anything to help a child in their life is a hero to me. And I agree with that. And I loved Mr. Rogers. All of these employees have been a part of the West Allis West Milwaukee School District, dedicating themselves, their time, their energy to working with children and their families. They are our heroes, and we're very thankful to them. Thank you for your continued commitment to our district.
Jack, did you want to say something?
Yes, I would just like to take this opportunity to personally congratulate all the retirees from 220. I've had the privilege over my years when I worked in the district of working with every one of them. And they're super people, and I'm sure they will find out retirement is well worth working for. And the other one that was surprising is a 30-year employee, John Bouchard. I was his mentor when he started in the district, but you know, I was only like 7 or 8 years old.
Yep.
Thank you for that opportunity.
Great. So again, congratulations to our retirees and those that have hit the benchmarks at 10, 20, and 30 years of service. The video is great. Just loved it. So I'll move on to 7.3. So just a couple quick updates. We're continuing our planning around returning to school in the fall. And there is general agreement amongst area superintendents, and I talk to our immediate neighbors, the superintendents, once a week, that there will be some form of face-to-face school in the fall. So I think that's a agreed upon consensus. The only thing that might change that if there's a sudden change in the transmission of COVID-19 or hospitalizations start to increase, deaths increase, and the health department at the state level is again ordering schools to be closed. That potentiality exists. But we're planning for that as well. And so we're putting together a cross-functional team. We started the conversations just with directors and managers, so our typical kind of leadership conversation. And what we quickly realized is we had some gaps in kind of knowledge set at the table. So we're adding a school nurse to the planning team. We're adding Ann Gerenser, the president of the Teachers Association. We're adding Melissa Cherney from HR. Melissa's is becoming our resident expert on all new things related to FMLA, so leaves that are going to need to be managed and will result because of different kinds of things, exposures to COVID, or my house is now under quarantine, so I'm not supposed to leave. So all kinds of eventualities could exist here. So we're putting a different kind of team together to help us build our plan. We are waiting to take more formal steps for DPI and DHS to release the statewide guidance about reopening schools. And what we understand from the big statewide meeting that included the nursing consultant from DPI is that they're working very closely together, and what they're going to produce is probably something more of a checklist. Here's all the things you need to have a plan for, and then examples. So examples of what that might look like in an elementary school, in a middle school, in a high school. Today, we talked with a number of teachers about various scenarios. So you may be familiar with some of the scenarios, and MPS put one out that they're considering as having students in grades 7 through 12 learn from home because they're able to stay home and don't need adult supervision, maybe. But legally, they're able to stay home. And using all of the square footage available to spread out elementary students. So the littles all come to school and the olders would learn from home. That's a scenario. Some school districts are considering facilitating learning in cohorts of students. So there may be kids that come to school Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday is a work planning day for teachers, and the other half come to school Thursday, Friday, and the other days they're learning from home. That's probably not the best solution for parents because some of the dynamic here is part of what we provide in schools is supervision, care, and education of kids. So it's the supervision part that parents really need because they're going to start going back to work. And so we're still kind of working through what that will look like for us. We believe that we're going to survey parents again about comfort levels related to returning kids to school. But districts that have already done these kind of surveys, or what we're hearing from districts in other states, is the consensus number starts to be about 75 to 80% of parents want kids back in school face-to-face. And there are 20 to 25% that are very uncomfortable with the idea. So we think we're going to have a solution that provides both. And within that, a solution that also has a plan for rolling closures. And so it is possible, like I said earlier, that entire school districts in the state could all be shut down if there's really a health emergency again. If not that, then will there be classrooms that get shut down, or a portion of a building, or an entire building that gets closed? And how do we adjust? So that has to be part of our plan. And then in the plan, we're anticipating that we're going to need very specific details for isolation of, so a little one comes to school and says, yeah, my mom tested positive last night and mom didn't call. Okay, so what's our plan? And it's probably different than many of the health offices that we currently manage, especially in elementary schools, because typically they're the way they're designing a lot of our schools, they're also kind of a pass-through to get from the office out into the corridor. Well, that's not a good place for isolation, right? So we've got to even rethink some of those things. But there'll be more to come on this. What our immediate neighbors, school districts, so again, we speak every week. Last week we agreed that we'd all target the first week of August as when we would share our plans. And that's even in the letter that's going out to families today, kind of our end of school year letter, so that they're not kind of waiting. So when are we going to hear something? Everybody will know the first week of August, and as things evolve, we'll check in with parents. If we need more information, we'll do that. So in terms of the close of the school year, again, we want to thank all of the teachers that have done, and all of the staff that have done tremendous work. The unsung heroes, kind of like Stephanie, your comments in the video about our teachers, are also people just like our truck drivers that have just been absolutely amazing in what they've been willing to take on. So those are the folks that have not only doing the normal delivery of mail and the kinds of things that need to be moved around in our school district, but also when we get a call that my device isn't working, or I dropped it and the screen cracked. And they're the ones that get a new device, drive to the house, pick up the old device, and just so proud of how everybody has stepped up and stepped in. Today, Deidre and I did 5 Zoom meetings. We originally planned on 3, and we quickly learned that the free versions of Zoom have a limit of 100 people, and we didn't anticipate that this would be a very popular kind of town hall meeting. It was really to do 3 things, to just appreciate everybody and thank them for, a strange but really very good school year for us. One of the interesting things that I shared in each of them, as an appreciation for their shift to learning from home, and then we threw another curveball in the shift to passion projects. And I see Matt Lesser in the meeting here. It was in a leadership team meeting last week. The team from Hale shared some data about that attendance when we shifted to passion projects went up, and not by a little amount, almost 10 percentage points, which is huge for high school students. So not only did they start showing up more, but the team from Hale also shared that while they were working on passion projects, a whole bunch of the kids started turning in more of their late work. So assignments that had been asked of them earlier, they started to catch up. So we think it's a really interesting and important data point for us in our deeper learning vision, that when students are empowered in their learning and are learning through things that they care deeply about, they work harder. Right? And that's the theory of action inside of deeper learning. What we really need kids to do is work harder, because that's where the learning happens. And we're getting some evidence of that. In these meetings, we had 3 scheduled. We added 2. Every one of them had 100 people in them. So we talked to 500 employees today. And so that's why I'm coughing and I don't have a lot of voice left. But we also talked about the 2021 budget, and Caitlin's going to take us through a workshop. So there may be people joining the meeting because, if you're interested in learning more, come to the board meeting tonight. And then we also talked, just like I did at the beginning of my updates here, about our thinking about the return to school planning process. And what I wanted to kind of end my report with is what I shared in each of the meetings today is, and it's something we've been asking of educators of, what's something that surprises you or that's unique learning for you that you probably wouldn't have recognized or been able to do had it not been for this situation we're all in, right? So that it's the silver lining kind of question, right? And for me, what it's been is, and I described it this way, is that, my schedule gets built for the day, and Suzette does a lot of that, and there's meetings, and there's things I'm trying to get done, and there's reports, and there's grants, and as I'm working on things, there's all kinds of little things that pop into my schedule, like a concert here, or a Shark Tank there, or students want to interview the superintendent over in Mitchell, and I've often experienced those things in a regular school as little annoyances in my day. Like, I'm trying to get important work done and I got to run out to Mitchell. And what I've recognized and miss most are the things that used to be annoying, right? The things that keep me grounded in the work, and I think, quite frankly, keep me sane, are the things that interrupt when I'm trying to do the hard thinking. And it reminds me of like why we do this work. And I miss those reminders. I miss being annoyed. And I told all the teachers that today. That I need you guys back because you need to annoy me. And that's a healthy thing. And so that was my big learning. So that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Marty. Jeff? You're still muted. You were muted that whole time, Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're really missing that, we could draw straws as board members and pick a day, and everyone call and just pick on you for a day if it makes you feel better.
Annoy him. All right.
It's the children.
We all have kids. A lot of us have kids. We could make that happen. So, all right. So we'll move on to item 8, the board president's report. Taking a look at the board calendar. So today, June 8th, we have a regular Board of Education meeting, and immediately following that, we do have a workshop on the proposed 2020-2021 budget and preliminary tax levy number 2. Next Monday, June 15th, starting at 6 o'clock, we do have a workshop, employee engagement and parent satisfaction survey results and school improvement plan process. On Monday, June 22nd, starting at 6 p.m., a regular Board of Education meeting, including the approval of the proposed 2020-2021 budget and preliminary tax levy. And then we have 4th of July holiday. And then Monday, July 13th, starting at 6 p.m., a regular Board of Education meeting. Monday, July 20th at 6 p.m., a workshop, which will slot in the topic. And then Monday, July 27th at 6 p.m., a regular Board of Education meeting. Do any board members have any community events or anything that they want to update? And if you, board members, if you haven't checked your email yet today, I did send out committee assignments for the year. That would be via email, so you have that. And directors were CC'd on that as well, so we can get going on that work and get moving forward. So thank you everybody for your responses and for the good work that comes with that. All right, so then we'll move on to our consent agenda for the evening. We have 3 items. 9.1, the approval of minutes from the May 18th, 2020 regular Board of Education meeting and the June 1st, 2020 workshop. Item 9.2, the employment summary, and item 9.3, the supplementary contracts. Does anyone need anything separated?
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you very much. All right, we will then move on to our action items for the evening. Item 10.1, the English language arts adoption. Deidre, is that you, Dr. Lexman?
Yep, it's me. Good evening, everyone. So thanks again for taking the time to kind of hear the teachers in the workshop. They've worked really hard at trying to choose a product that they think will really serve us well in the work we're trying to do as a core resource. And so tonight we are just looking for approval to move forward with the purchase. I did get the confirmation from McGraw-Hill again today that the financing would work out the way Caitlin and I kind of designed it. And then we got some updates from them just on when the math resources come up for renewal in the next couple of years so that we can try to not have overlap between math and ELA, which has too large of an impact on the budget in any given year. So we worked on that with McGraw-Hill, and otherwise we are all set to go with exactly as we talked about it last week. The quote actually came in about $5,000 less than what we had shared last week.
Great.
Move to
Any
approve.
comments or questions for Deidre? If there are no comments or questions, we'll look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any final comments or questions? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, looking forward to seeing that in the district. Great job, everybody. Please extend our thanks to the committee as well for all the work that they put into, and then everything that's going to come next. Now the hard work starts. So.
Yep. The training schedule already started today in anticipation that we might get some support this evening. We're already mapping out days for summer for professional development for staff.
We like the proactivity, so thank you very much for that. All right, we move on to item 10.2, the 2020-2021 Chapter 220 agreement. Caitlin? I can't hear Caitlin.
I can jump in. I was going to talk about that if everyone's okay.
Yeah, go for it, Aaron. Yep.
Perfect. So this is an annual item that's on the docket. Can everyone hear me?
Now I can.
Okay, I don't know what that was. I kept hearing the static there too. So I'll continue. Anyway, the Chapter 220 agreement is something that is an annual item that moves to board approval around the end of May and June. The Chapter 220 agreement is essentially the integration program prior to what is known as open enrollment now. And so the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction has been moving since the 2015-16 school year to phase that out because they have open enrollment now. So students who were in the Chapter 220 program prior to the 15-16 school year have been grandfathered in to continue to attend their resident or their non-resident school district. So our agreement this year is we have 2 students remaining that will be with us for their senior years in the 2021 school year that attend our school district from Milwaukee. And so I would ask the school board to, the recommendation is that to approve for those students to remain for their last year.
Any comments or questions for Aaron? Sorry, Christy. Okay, Christy, if no comments or questions, then we look for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Not all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. We will move on that. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
All right, move on to item 10.3, the approval of the 2018-2019 audit report.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. You're quiet.
Can you kick me off on my original one?
Were you asking me a question, Kate?
She asked you to kick her off of her original one. Is she on here twice?
Yeah, she's on the second one.
That's Brandon. I'll tell Brandon he's the manager of the meeting.
Trying to remove her right now.
Okay, I think we're good. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, trying to roll with the punches. I had to switch computers at the last second. My internet just stopped working on that one. Okay, so I apologize for that. Thank you for your patience. So this is just the audit report that we reviewed. This is from the 18-19 audit. And so last week we talked about where our fund balance was at. We talked through our audit findings, where we've grown to improve and where we can continue to improve, and some of the processes that we've put in place. So this is just an approval of that.
Any questions for Caitlin? Now we'd look for a motion.
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Moved and seconded. Christine, are you the second then?
Sure.
Okay, so we've been moved and seconded. Any final questions or comments? Not all those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Right, the approval of the audit passes. Thank you very much. And then we'll move on to item 10.4, the supplemental compensation distribution for teachers and educational assistants for 2019-2020. Dr. Lexman?
Thank you. So this is tied to our work on developing a new compensation model. And like so many things that we've been working on, the result of school closures and all of the new things that we're trying to figure out, like planning for the fall, there's just some things have just not stayed on the plate, right? So the compensation committee, there is a model that's developed, and Caitlin and her team are currently crunching numbers on various ways to try to implement that model. And then Deidre and her team, because it's a model that combines a step and lane, so a more traditional looking model, because part of what the committee wanted to establish is predictability and ease of communicating how the compensation system works here. So that steps and lanes that would have micro credentials that are tied to the strategic plan. So the lanes would be accomplishing, specific micro credentials that then teachers would move over and get an increase in salary, both by year and by lane. But there's quite a bit of work there, and what I've described, at least to Ann Garenser at this point, and we will reconvene the committee soon once we have a little better sense of what implementation options there are. But what I've described to Ann Garenser at this point, given what we're forecasting in future budgets, that model is more aspirational than actual, right? Because it will take an upfront investment to begin implementing a different compensation system where teachers move more quickly towards the upper end of the salary system. So it costs more. But we essentially knew that going in. And we're still committed to that work. What we're doing right now with this particular item is there is $1 million in the current budget that was budgeted for additional compensation for teachers and educational assistants, with the hope that that would be part of the investment in the new compensation model. Like I just said, we're not quite there yet. But we think it's important that we use these dollars to invest in our current teachers and educational assistants. And some of that, I think, it also fulfills some of the budget priorities that the board has set. And so the two we talk about all the time is employee compensation and class size, right? Those are the top two from when we started the budget planning process last year, and we work on kind of 2-year cycles in the state. So we're using those same priorities now. And the top two priorities that the compensation committee set were about establishing a compensation model that attracts and retains teachers and moves us closer to the average teacher salary in our region, so essentially in CESA 1. And so what is in front of you is really a recommendation from the committee, so the Financial Stability and Efficiency Committee, and I'm really proud of where the committee landed. I was in the meeting at the beginning, jumped over to the PTA meeting. So I didn't learn until the next day where the committee recommendation landed, and I think it very much aligns to the board's priorities in budgeting and the compensation committee's priorities in the new model. And so essentially what is being recommended is a 1% increase for all educational assistants. This would be a supplemental increase, and we're talking about it as supplemental because under Act 10, we can only negotiate base wage increases up to CPI, and the board has already approved that, and the 2.44%, which is the maximum for this year, has already been provided to educational assistants. The additional 1% in supplemental compensation then aligns to what all other employee groups except teachers have received, which is 3.44% increase for the school year. The difference here is what is being recommended for teachers, which is for every teacher a supplemental increase of $1,270. And the committee leaned more into that than across the board 1%, because the 1% when you're on the low end of the salary schedule is fairly small, and when you're on the upper end is fairly large. And if we're trying to move more to the average and attract and retain teachers, providing an across the board same amount actually does a better job at that. And we know we lose more teachers in the 5 to 10 years of service window. So this puts more increase, or a larger percent increase, at the lower to middle end of our current salary system to hopefully support those teachers and attract and retain them. And over time, it starts to move us more towards the average. So the administration very much supports where this is. I did communicate with Ann Gerenser about it. She did share it with the executive committee of the association. And what I got back is they fully support it. The questions, they wanted to make sure this would also apply to retirees or those that maybe resigned during the school year. And the answer to that is yes, it does. And it would be prorated. So, if a teacher resigned and took a new job at semester, well, it would be half of that amount. Or if a teacher is a part-time teacher, it would be prorated appropriately. And so what we shared all this information in our 5 Zoom meetings today, that this was in front of the board this evening. And hopefully with the board support, we're able to get this into the compensation compensation system that we currently use in payroll and get this out to teachers before the end of the current fiscal year. So Caitlin, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
You pretty much covered it. I don't really have much to add, except that when I worked with Janice Loki in payroll today, June 25th is the date that this would be rolled out in terms of compensation. So, but we had a thorough conversation. I mean, it wasn't shorthanded when we talked through it at our committee meeting on Wednesday night. Probably a good 45 minutes weighed this one. So I think that everybody came to a conclusion together, and hoping that the board would support that this decision. So it was definitely well thought out by our committee.
Great. Those are the kinds of things we love to hear about the committee work. That's where the work gets done a lot of times, is at that level. So I'm glad to hear that. Does anyone in the committee want to add anything different or any other supplements to what Dr. Lexman and Caitlin have contributed so far?
I'll just chime in quickly. We considered a number of different possibilities, and I will say from where we started leaning towards was not where we ended up. And input from some administrators, Jeff and Caitlin were there, definitely helped kind of shape what we were looking to gain to do. So that's when we landed on the option that is before the rest of the board here today. We do think that it will go towards all of our strategic goal plans and hopefully be able to attract and retain those teachers that we really want to do. So,
any comments or questions on the proposal?
I actually had one question, which is weird from me as the committee.
Yeah.
Hearing about the proration, if there's money, so we're saying $1,270, that's how the calculation rolls out. Is that taking into account known prorations that are going to happen so that the full $1 million is going to be distributed, or would that actually fluctuate depending on that proration?
Yeah, we called it an approximate because that doesn't include any prorations. So
okay.
So swing a little bit one way or the other. Well, it would probably go up, but
yeah.
by $100.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other comments or questions? If not, we would look for a motion.
Motion to move. I believe I have to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you. Kristen, were you making a motion?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? All right, we have we have one recusal. So then all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, great work, everybody. All right, we move on to item 10.5, the WIAA Senior High Membership Renewal Applications for 2020 and 2021.
Okay, these are annual items. So it's again approving the membership in WIAA for West Allis Central and West Allis Nathan Hale High Schools. We don't, and there may be folks that are listening, we don't know what or if fall sports will be provided. There was a piece that came out, and I shared that with the board through email earlier today, that made it sound like WIAA had approved fall sports, and that was bad information that got out in the media. And so WIAA is still working on this, but we do want to have our full membership renewed so that we're ready to go should the opportunity present itself.
Gary?
Yeah, I had something just dawned on me. When I had sent that an email because I had a question about the hockey one. But so if we have a situation where what if a student moves in the district and they're attending Hale and they would want to play hockey and they're not listed, Hale's not listed as a school on the form. does that student miss out on that opportunity?
So is,
Because we approved the cooperative team sponsorship back in April for boys hockey, and earlier we had approved one for girls hockey, where just Central is identified. But now, and then on the forms that we're submitting to WAA, we only have Central listed for hockey. We don't have Hale listed for hockey. So if we have a situation where a student moves in, is attending Hale, and they want to play hockey, do we know the WIA rule on that?
I don't. I would need an AD to be in the room with us.
Justin's online. I don't know if he wants to talk, but I see him.
Justin, come on in.
Maybe.
And Chad, he says hockey only applies for Central. They would not be able to play as a Hale student currently.
So then the question back to Justin. Justin is, if we were to check hockey on the Hale membership, would that student then be eligible to play hockey in the co-op?
It says the hockey co-op only applies to Central, so they wouldn't be able to. So we would have to add it, I would think.
So we'd have to go back and change the co-op agreement.
Yeah, I'm wondering, would we have to do that?
Okay.
But could we add Hale before doing that? Co-op schools.
We'd have to talk with the co-op schools that we would be participating with. So that wouldn't be something that we could decide unilaterally.
Because I was just curious, because I know, for example, New Berlin added both Eisenhower and West at the time. I don't know if they would have two students already in, or students from each school already interested, or they just covered it, saying we're just going to add both our schools in the event of. And it's something I think all of us missed. We missed it when we first made that approval. Again, something I don't think we would have thought about.
So will we have to, if we want to add this, if we want to add hockey and remove that barrier, we would have to go back first to the co-op schools to make sure they were okay with that, and then come back and approve the WIA contract for both then?
Yeah, so the comment is that the schools and the co-op would like to see that we have interest.
Oh, I see.
And then once we have interest, then we could be added.
So can we just check Hale? Can we add hockey to Hale's form? And then if we have interest, then talk to the co-op, and that way we're cleared through WIAA for hockey for Hale. Or does there need to be an agreement to play hockey from somebody from Hale in order for this to be?
Because the cooperative team sponsorship is a 2-year agreement. So I mean, and I'm saying it's possible. What if somebody moves into the district and they have an interest in playing, and they're a Hale student? Are they locked out?
Currently, yes.
Yeah.
My understanding.
Yeah, and the membership form, the instructions make it clear, please do not check any additional boxes, and please do not white out any checks below. You may cross off any sports you will not be offering. If you note a discrepancy in the offerings, check, please contact. So we're not able to change it at this stage. We'd have to not approve Hale and then go back to the WIAA with this set of questions and bring it back again.
I would think it'd be the same as when we added Central in the first place, that if we had a student interested in Hale, we would have to go back to amend that co-op. Then at that point in time, the same way Central was added for the WIAA, we'd go and add Hale. So I think it would be the same type of process.
Okay.
So there's still flexibility down the road when we have interest. Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Gary. Thank you for bringing that up.
So can we approve these then as is and just take care of any issues down the road at the time?
Yes.
Yeah, if there's no additional questions, then we would be looking for a motion down the road. Yep. Any other questions before we move forward with that? Okay, then we look for a motion.
Make a motion.
Approved. Seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Not all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. Okay, then we will move on to our workshop for the evening. Item 11.1, financial stability and efficiency, the proposed 2020-2021 budget and preliminary tax levy number 2.
All right, so now that I'm on the other computer, I am going to share my screen and let's see if it lets me here. Okay, perfect. All right, are you seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. All right, so moving into the preliminary budget for 2021. And I just have to start by congratulating our senior class. Again, as we talked about, this is about as non-traditional as it gets, and our seniors are only going to be more prepared for the overcoming challenges in life and finding success. So again, congrats to our class of 2020. So moving into the preliminary budget, we are going to go through the factors that we're seeing from COVID. And we know that the state's budget has been significantly impacted by COVID due to some of the revenue streams that our state budget anticipates each year. Income tax, sales tax, and gas tax are 3 that are significantly impacted and reduced via COVID. And so one of the largest state expenses so they bring in revenue via those 3 avenues. And then one of their biggest expenses, the state's biggest expenses, is education. So due to that trickle-down effect, we assume that we will see an impact from COVID. The extent to which we do not know yet. So we don't have the new information on per pupil allocations. So we are using the assumptions and the speculations that have been provided to us by our School Administrators Alliance, or SAA. So our state works on biennial budgets, which means they approve 2 budget cycles at one time, 2 budget years at one time. So 2021 was supposed to be the 2nd year in the biennial budget, which generally is easier to budget for because you know your revenue limit numbers and everything way earlier in the game than you would the 1st year in a biennial budget. So the biennial budget for next year that's currently in state law has a per pupil increase within our revenue limit of $179. We are using the projection of not only a $0 increase for next year, but a $50 decrease in our per pupil amount for next year. And again, that came from School Administrators Alliance. So this is just in line with our past practice of creating a conservative budget at this point in the game, just simply because we don't know yet what that number is going to look like. And it's interesting too, because throwing another curveball in this whole situation is that it's an election year. So we don't know if that's going to have an impact in this per pupil allocation for next year or not yet at this point. So we're moving forward with projecting our preliminary budget for next year using that $50 decrease in per pupil allocations. But that is by no means in any state statute and is definitely subject to change. So as we use that factor, our current projected budget for next year right now, as it stands, is a deficit of about $3 million. So we look to tonight to kind of talk through the different avenues that we have to either balance our budget or come close and work through a deficit budget for next year. One of the items that we do have from as a result of COVID is the CARES Act. So that's the funding that school districts will be receiving. We still have to go through the application project, but we now do have our allocations for next year. So we are scheduled to receive about 1.6 million. We do have to go using a formula, allocate some of that money to private schools. So private schools through that formula will receive approximately 250,000. And that could go down a little bit based on the schools that are included in that calculation, but about 250,000. So what that means is that we have 1.4 million left to spend. And the good thing about the CARES funding is that we don't just have to use it by the end of next fiscal year, but we actually have 2 fiscal years to spend it, which is important because we don't believe that next year is the only year we're going to see an impact from COVID. While we anticipate we will see an impact next year, we probably will see an impact the following biennial state budget, which means really the next 3 fiscal years. So it would be in our best interest to, while exciting and maybe easy to spend it all in one year, to really divide that 1.4 million by 2 and spend it over the next 2 fiscal years. So when we work through the assumptions in our budget, you'll see that we have $700,000 projected from CARES Act revenue for next year. Another implication we're seeing from COVID is that our summer school enrollment is down. And I think some families are just feeling burnt out. They're over it. But it is important to note that our summer school attendance does provide us with additional funding. So that FTE that comes from summer school does count in our revenue limit. So the more students who are attending our summer school, the more money we get, essentially it boils down to.
Yeah, Caitlin, let me just jump in. This is a pattern that is consistent with other school districts as well. Lisa Elliott, the superintendent in Greenfield, in our last meeting reported they were enrolling about half the number of kids for summer school that they typically would, and that's kind of where we are right now.
Thanks, Marty. So I felt like it was in everybody's best interest for me to just throw this piece in here. It is an important piece in determining our revenue each year. So the schools have information on their websites, or I actually have a link in this PowerPoint. You can find this presentation on our website as well, or obviously you can always contact a school principal for more information on summer school. But just wanted to throw it out there that this will impact our future budgets. We have a decline, not to get too into the weeds, but we have a declining enrollment exemption within our revenue limit, which kind of cushions the blow 1 year, which would for us be next year, but then the following years we would see the implications of that declining enrollment. And as we work through, before we get into the nitty-gritty details of our budget for next year, it's important to remember that the budget is still very much in flux at this point of the year, and especially this year as we work through many unknowns. So we will do our best, and we'll kind of work through the scenario that our finance committee wanted to plan through together today, but know that factors certainly could change and will change going forward before we approve our final budget in October. So it's important when we start talking through our budget that we know what's in it, so that when we go through the various opportunities for savings in order to balance our budget, we know what's already included and what's not included. So there's a lot of numbers on the screen here. I'll just go through them one by one, and this will take us a little while, but it's important for us to know really what we're looking at when we talk through next year's budget. So currently in the budget, where we will see a deficit of $3 million, calculated in there is a 1.81% CPI increase for staff. So that's our consumer price index. That's the amount for next year. So that is included in the budget, which when we go through the various budget scenarios and the opportunities for savings, that's about a $725,000 expense that's included in next year's budget. We also have included in next year's budget a fund balance addition of about $500,000. So as a reminder, one of our goals in our strategic plan is that we increase our fund balance to about 20% of our total amount of expenditures. So what that really boils down to is a fund balance of around 21 million. And in the audit report that was just approved, we ended 18-19 at $18.9 million. So we're on our way, certainly a very healthy place to be at. And our goal of that 20%, really the ultimate goal of a healthy fund balance is to, if there's ever major catastrophes that you have to have a one-time expense for, your fund balance is there for those emergencies. But also when you have those cash reserves, it allows us to avoid short-term borrowing or get a lower interest rate when we do short-term borrow, and which is very normal. About half the districts in the state short-term borrow when you have your low point throughout the year. For us, our low point is somewhere between November and January. So we included in this budget to have that $500,000 in the fund balance addition for next year. And that still works us on our way to that 20% of fund balance. We also have in here a $325,000 contribution to Fund 46. And again, that is our annual contribution to keep up and keep on track for our turf field replacement plan. So $325,000 each year. And again, what's important for that one is that in 17-18, we contributed 2 years worth. So we do have a little bit of a cushion. We have a cushion of 1 year in that Fund 46 pot, so that if we didn't contribute this year, we wouldn't fall behind We also have in here the ELA curriculum adoption, which is $300,000 for 2 years. And then there's also, I think, $114,000 in the third year. So this is in our budget for next year. Really exciting that that was approved tonight. We do have in here also $200,000 for the new short-term borrowing. So like we talked about, until we grow our fund balance to the point where we don't have to short-term borrow, we will have to short-term borrow and pay interest on that borrowing. So we actually have been working with our banking institution, BMO, and getting a line of credit set up for that. So this $200,000 is an estimate now of what our short-term borrowing interest expense will be for 1920. $200,000 is in this budget for additional SPED services. So that's what Dr. Lexman read through in the legislative update. We were originally calling them compensatory services, and now they want us to call them additional SPED services. So we have $200,000 in 1920's budget booked for that. We have $200,000 for device repair and replacements. We don't quite know the extent to which we're going to have to be repairing and replacing devices. We are processing the collecting devices that we have right now, and tech is going through those, and then we'll have a better idea of exactly how much money we will need to spend on those. Also included in this in the 2021 budget is the teacher computer refresh. So this originally wasn't in the 2021 budget. However, we did, as we dig through the budget, there's a lot of components, and one of the components is tech leases. So we have a tech lease that actually is falling off at the end of this year. So next year we don't have that payment. So the teacher computer refresh essentially replaces that payment. If we didn't do it this year, and the teacher devices really are on their last leg, but if we had to push it out one more year, that would mean we're starting another lease the following year, so in 21, 22. And then we also have a big expense in VoIP, voice over IP telephone systems, which are also on their last level of support for technology for those phone systems. So including a teacher computer refresh in 2021 would mean that we essentially a lease fell off and we just put one right back on. Also included in next year's preliminary budget is a 20% health insurance increase. At this time, we don't have exact numbers on what our health insurance increase is going to look like, but that is a conservative estimate. We worked with our insurance broker. We had 10% in here originally, and he said, you're going to want to increase that. So if we do come in under 20, that turns into additional funds for us. But this current budget as it's at right now is 20% increase in health insurance. This one's more fun. We have $700,000 of CARES Act revenue. Again, we have about $1.4 million that we get to spend, and that's over the span of 2 fiscal years. So if we cut that in half and say we want to spend half in 2021 and half in 21-22, that equates to $700,000 next year.
Caitlin?
Yep.
I was muted when I was trying to talk. Just a quick question on the healthcare. How are we trending?
We are trending a little bit higher than last year. And last year we had just under a 5% increase, and our insurance broker was wowed that we only had a 5% increase. So we anticipate it's definitely going to be more than 5. And the interesting thing with COVID is that you're not guaranteed to have higher renewals, but there's a balance. It kind of depends on how many people in our community.
But don't be surprised if you get it, right?
Yeah, it depends how many people are actually impacted by COVID, because we did see a reduction in those elective surgeries, which can come at a big cost. So it depends when we get to a renewal time where we're seeing those expenses.
Okay, thank you.
Also included in next year's budget is the vacant teacher position. So as we talked through at previous board meetings, we're in a hiring pause right now. And so we are really only filling those positions that are vacant in the high needs areas. And that just allows us the most flexibility moving into 2021 until we know more of our budget factors. But as teachers have informed us that they're not returning or they're retiring, those vacant positions are still in the budget for next year at this time. And then one other item is that this current structure, the draft of a compensation model that Marty talked through, the additional funds needed for that are not included in this budget right now. So that's a whole lot of information, but it'll make the rest of the night much smoother. So thank you for hanging in there while we went through that. Before we get to the actual scenarios, we'll talk through mill rate quick. This hasn't changed from last time we talked through this at the end of April. We do project our mill rate to drop again next year. So this will be the third year in a row that we'll be seeing a drop in mill rate. And I always have to point out that it's important to remember our history, because taxpayers never remember when their taxes go down, but they always remember when they go up. So we probably will see our mill rate drop once again into the high 7s before we start to level off. But it's just important to note our history, and we see that spike in 17, 18 in the last couple of years has been decreasing from there. So just have to give a huge shout out to our Board Financial Stability and Efficiency Committee. This team really worked through these scenarios that we'll talk through in a second here as a team, and really thoroughly vetted and thought through every single decision. And this was just what their recommendations were. We'll talk through if you make any changes tonight, or add, if there's another scenario where you want us to cost out, how much would this cost, or would this save us in costs for next year? We absolutely can do that. So just a big thank you to the committee, and it's certainly obvious that they value our staff and students, and just appreciate it. So when we started talking through this, there were so many different what ifs, and we decided that the best way to work through our preliminary budget is as if next year is a normal school year. All right, is everybody seeing the spreadsheet now? Just give me a nod.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is the way that we've organized our options for next year. And again, this is not all encompassing. If there's other items that we want to talk through tonight, and we can cost out for the approval of the prelim budget for the 22nd, please shout them out. Yes, go ahead, Noah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to elaborate a little bit about the decision to look at this as a regular school year. We all understand that it's most likely not going to be a regular school year, but because of all of the possible factors of decreasing costs or increasing costs, depending on how the school year next year actually works, at this point in June, we felt it was going to be an effort in futility to try and talk about all those possible scenarios when approving the budget we're going to have to approve in 2 weeks. And so that way we wanted to simplify it down to, well, let's just pretend like we're going to have regular school year next year. Let's go through those scenarios with the understanding that we all know that this is going to all change and may be completely different that we're looking at right now. And then at that point, then we can probably look into some of those other scenarios about where we can save money and where we might have to spend more money than we're expecting because of whatever that school year is end up going to be.
I think so. All right, so we'll just go through these options that are laid out. The dollar amounts that are in here this is where the committee landed when we met on Wednesday. And it's kind of fun in a nerdy way in this spreadsheet, because so what we have up here is the projected deficit is approximately at this point $3 million. And then anytime we put a dollar amount in a cell in this reduction column, that's totaling as a savings, and then the remaining deficit is calculated here. So as our finance committee met on Wednesday, this is where we landed. And we'll just go through item by item. Feel free to come forward with any comments that you have along the way. So we talked through our surplus, our potential or projected surplus at the end of this year. We can strategically use those funds in a Fund 46 or a Fund 38 to help with our expenses for next year. So what that really means is prepaying debt, or putting funds aside, kind of prepaying that turf field replacement fund. So again, I'm just using super conservative numbers here. If our surplus was $2 million, which we're anticipating right now, still between that $3 and $5 million. But let's just say on the super conservative side, if it was $2 million, we would recommend that we subtract out $825,000, which is a $500,000 addition to fund balance in Fund 10, and that Fund 46 contribution that is not already included in the budget. So this would be us doing that for 1920. If we subtracted that out, we'd still have about $1.1 million to use in Fund 38, really prepaying debt to free up for other expenses for next year. This is just assuming, hey, let's use $500,000 of that extra surplus for next year. Our next item that we talked through was building budgets. So altogether, building budgets are about $2.2 million. And our committee decided let's throw the 500,000 in here. I shouldn't say just throw because it was a thoughtful decision, but when our committee worked through the similar scenarios last year, our schools budgeted with a 25% reduction. And then as we worked through to our final budget and had our known budget factors, the schools that was refunded in full. And so the schools received their 100% last year. So our committee recommended that we go forward again with it's about a 23%, 24% reduction for our preliminary budget for schools to use in budgeting for 2021. Next item on here is reducing the amount for Fund 46, which is Future Capital Improvement Projects. That's the official name of that fund. And what we're using it for is for the turf fields. So again, $325,000 is required each year in order for us to maintain our planned turf field replacement plan. And in 17-18, we did fund 2 years worth. So we do have one room to spare in terms of funding that Fund 46. So our committee recommended that we go ahead and put in $325,000 reduction, meaning we take that money out of, we don't put it towards Fund 46 for next year. We also have included, as you saw in our assumptions, is a fund balance that restoration. So again, the $500,000 towards fund balance for next year. We're going to be sitting at a very healthy place after 1920, and depending on where our board decides to put the remaining surplus from 1920, we could even potentially be at 20 million. So our committee recommended let's reduce that fund balance restoration by $500,000 for 2021 at this time in the preliminary budget. And that's kind of one where all of these factors, as we talked through with the committee, was what's least going to impact our staff and students. This one is pretty much as far away from staff and students as we can get. And Noah brought up a good point in our committee meeting, was that it's not that we're using fund balance, we're just not adding this $500,000 to fund balance. In our capital improvement projects plan, in order to maintain our projects each year, we require about $1.2 million. So in next year's budget, we have $1.2 million budgeted. In this current fiscal year, in 1920, we decided when the final budget was approved to only, we reduced that to 1 million. So from the 1.2 to 1 million in 1920. However, when I worked with Steve Eichmann on what was impacted by that reduction in 1920, and we were still able to complete everything. There were things that we were able to do internally that we were able to just essentially save that 200,000 this year. However, next year, what that would mean is the Nathan Hale parking lot, which is in serious need of repair, as we all know if you've ever driven through there, that alone will cost about $1 million. If we reduce the budget from next year from 1.2 million to 1 million, what that means is there are roofs that are on the docket for next year. There's 4 schools that wouldn't have roof replacements or that certain area of the roof. There's also a boiler at Mitchell that's at its end of its useful life that wouldn't see replacement next year if we reduced from 1.2 million to 1 million. The facilities department could utilize their actual facilities budget. However, next year is a place that we're going to anticipate we will have more expenses in facilities next year with PPE, with hand sanitizer, with plexiglass. All those expenses that we wouldn't really have in a normal year, we're probably going to see next year within that budget. So when I asked Steve, facilities manager, about how detrimental would this be if we went from 1.2 million to 1 million next year, and he had a very politically correct answer and said, well, the roofs are at the end of their useful life, or that portion of the roofs. The boiler's at the end of its useful life. But if this means the difference between not being able to give a CPI or reducing teachers and being able to replace that portion of roof, we'll keep our eye on the roof, is basically what he said. So it's kind of up to us. We do know, though, if we didn't do this $1.2 million next year, what that would mean is we either have to do 1.4 million the following year, or everything going forward is just shifted back a year. And another note on facilities, as we've talked through earlier, is kind of like a car that's coming to the end of its life. The more you put things off, the more they cost when you have to go fix them. All right, moving on is CPI. So again, in our budget, we have a 1.81% CPI increase for all staff. And if we moved to decrease that, we could do any percent. Our committee recommended that at this time, with our current budget and all the factors that we know, that we keep CPI in the budget for next year. And again, this is just our preliminary budget, but that's what our committee's recommendation was, to keep that CPI in there and do not put a decrease in for next year yet, or at all right now. And then the other item that we talked through that our committee recommended not touching was reducing supplemental pay budget. So this contains both district curriculum leads, as well as academic school supplementals for extracurriculars, extra school clubs, etc. So we didn't touch that one. And these were the items that we talked through when we were looking at what if next year is a normal year. We also kind of talked through this tab called Back to School Scenario Saving Ideas, which everything's in a super preliminary state, and we're working on how would each of these items impact every single person who would touch such a thing. So for example, if we didn't use our intermediate pools next year, how would that affect the special ed students who use those pools within those schools? Would they have to get transportation to the high schools? How much would it save us in terms of electricity? How much would it save us in water and refilling those pools, et cetera? So those are all items that we're still vetting, and all are based on if next year is not normal. So kept them separate because our committee decided at this time to proceed as if next year is a normal year in terms of preliminary budget. Last year at this time, when we approved our preliminary budget, we approved about $1 million deficit, and that's been our past practice as well. So approving a preliminary budget in the red isn't unheard of by any means, and it's been what we've done the last few years. Committee or any other board members have any comments on these items?
No.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about the last item there, the supplemental contracts. We discussed about, well, we can reduce by this. If we don't have school, then maybe we're not going to have, supplemental contracts. But that kind of took us back to the, well, that's a lot of postulating about what may or may not happen. And a number there is going to be meaningless if things change. So we just wanted to leave those things alone and try to look at it from the perspective of, even though we know this budget is required for us to pass and that it's in jello, as Marty always says, we don't want to make anyone get freaked out about things that we've put in the budget or we've taken out of the budget that are going to really affect the morale of our staff or parents. And so that's what the lens we were trying to look through when we were saying, where do we want to cut, where we not want to cut, and how do we want to really look at this at this point in time. In whatever we end up passing, in June should be, the communication needs to be just as such. There's so many unknowns at this point that a budget that we're passing right now is almost meaningless.
Any other questions or comments or suggestions? It's very well thought through again, so thank you all for that. All these are things that nobody wants to have that conversation on or wants to think about cutting, but these are all the thoughtful things, and to continue to keep the focus of what impacts our classrooms the least, which includes teachers and everything in the buildings themselves. And so that's always a crucial point, and so that you guys continue to keep that front and center is important. So thank you for doing that. Marty, did you have any other comments on that?
Similar to what you just shared, Stephanie, I want to thank Caitlin and the team for putting the work into this and sharing it in a way that's really well organized and thoughtful. And I think for anybody that's joining us, easy to understand. So I really appreciate it. And I also want to thank the committee for the work on this. I also really appreciate to set something that can hold firm, which is let's plan like it's a normal year, because there are so many things that are unknowns that if you try to address all of them, you're just going to spin. So this at least gives us a place to land for now. And, we're off by 1% given the total budget, or less than 1%, which is not a bad place to be at this time of year, given everything we're trying to account for. So I think we're in a good spot. So I appreciate it.
I would agree with that. I'm comfortable at this point with where we are in terms of numbers, again, planning for something that is a potential, outcome, and then being able to adjust from there. That makes the least amount of scrambling, I guess, down the road if we're planning for a traditional school year. We know that going into this, and that this is what this budget looks like, so that when the changes do happen, whatever those are going to be, we know what point we're starting from, instead of, oh, well, we thought we might be doing this, so we had this in the budget because we thought it might be 30% remote and 70% for, we just go forward from a set point. And I think that makes any adjustments we have to make in the next, 3 to 5 months that much, I don't want to say simpler because that's not the word, but less complicated, because we know what point we're starting from, and not all these other variables that are getting thrown in there. So I think that was a smart choice to start from. So at this point, if there's suggestions in terms of other items, that I know that you had recommendations as a comment on here, Caitlin. So if there are things that, you wake up in the middle of the night and you have an idea like, oh, well, what if we didn't do this? Or what if we did do this? Email you kind of thing from the board, just to kind of, if there's additional things, and you'll kind of filter out the crazy ones that come through at 3 in the morning, and then, use the rest of them to break through to committee.
Yes, and I just have to say, there's no such thing as a dumb idea. I mean, we brainstorm.
I said crazy, not dumb.
Okay, crazy, maybe yes, but it's good to have those, because then you realize, okay, this is on one end of the spectrum, a little out there, but this, scale it back, okay, this could be a doable idea. So honestly, nothing hurts. So if you ever have an idea, just put it out there, and then we will vet it and how it impacts anybody who touches that, and what the potential savings could be.
And I just want to throw something out to add to that, not only to thank Caitlin, but also we're trying to make it a little line item in our director meetings as well, where we just spend a few minutes saying, hey, has anybody thought of any new ideas what we could do to make sure that we're keeping things balanced? And so I appreciate the fact that she's seeking input from all kinds of people, so that we can make sure that we aren't short-sighted in one of the decisions we make that creates a problem we can't go back from later on. And so I appreciate that.
Can you remind us then, Caitlin, on the next phase of the budget calendar, just for people who are listening and stuff too, and just a reminder for all the board members?
So we approve this preliminary budget on Monday the 22nd, and then we don't in the calendar have another meeting, I believe, until August. I'm not in my office, I don't have my laminated sheet in front of me. But what we did talk through at committee is that whenever we know more, we'll probably just set up another budget workshop. So whether that means we know what next school year is going to look like, or we know what our budget allocations will be, we'll create another workshop based on those factors and talk through them.
Great. Questions, comments, suggestions to Caitlin and committee?
I just want to thank Caitlin and Jeff for their efforts in putting this together. It's not easy to do, and it gives us as a committee a good starting point when we already have kind of categories to work with, and kind of allowed us to talk through it and figure out what we thought would be best and what would make the most sense for us at this point in time. So I just want to thank them for that work and the flexibility to allow us to kind of sometimes talk through crazy scenarios and then realize they're crazy, and then, okay, we're not going to do that. But at least allows us to make sure that we feel comfortable what we're bringing forward for everyone else to look at.
Anything else on the budget workshop?
Well, I have, so again, shoot me an email if board or anybody who's even watching has any ideas, and I just thank you for your time and hope I didn't drag on too long.
These are always this is always time well spent, and the collaboration piece is critical. So, I mean, whether, you're doing this at directors, you're doing this at other meetings, you're doing this at this level too, that's the important part. So that it's not being done in a vacuum, not being considered, for anything else. And that's important, and that it's transparent. I mean, these are coming forward, there's detail, all of this is out there. So that's obviously what the goal of the board was several years ago, was to do all of those things. And it's impressive that we continue to do that at that level. And it keeps getting better. I mean, budget doesn't always necessarily get better, but the process of how we communicate and collaborate continues to get better. So that's always positive to see. So anybody else have anything for Caitlin and committee? Jeff?
There we go. just a big thanks to Caitlin and your team and your committee for all the work you're putting into this.
Thank you very much.
It is appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, if there aren't any additional comments or questions on the budget in the workshop, we can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional last things? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you,
Everybody stay
everybody.
safe.
Yep, thank you everyone for your time and patience and